You might have heard that there are different tax buckets, and when you're thinking about saving and investing, that there are certain buckets that have different tax advantages or disadvantages and rules around them, but you're not quite sure how the different things work and how they might apply to you. That is what we're going to talk about in this episode. All right, y'all. Welcome to another episode of Elephant Corner Financial Lab. My name is Nepo Vulic. I am a financial planner, and I am here this channel with the goal to help individuals figure out more things about their personal finance and their money so that they can be more successful and find it easier to manage their daily lives. So, in today's episode, we are really going to be talking about different tax buckets. They're not actual buckets, right? They're just sort of like conceptual. They're accounts. And we have basically three different buckets that we can think about and talk about. Now, one of the first buckets that we have is going to be a taxable bucket, okay? And the taxable bucket is going to be basically your brokerage account, your savings, um, let's see, your checking. I should probably zoom out just a little bit so y'all can see this. So checking typically doesn't pay a whole lot of money, but it is part of the taxable account, right? So what does the taxable piece mean? Well, it means that every single year there is going to be a percentage of the money that is going to be taken out for the taxes. Now, it doesn't have to be taken out of that account, but you're going to have to pay for it somehow. And the way that it works is that, say, for example, you put money in a savings account, right? And savings account pays you 5%. You can't really find 5% these days, but we used to not that long ago. But let's say for the ease of math, it pays the 5%. So if I put in $100, right, at the end of the year, I will get my little $5 in interest. And this $5 is going to be fully taxable, and it's going to be showing up on my tax return. So that's what the taxable account basically means. Then we have a tax deferred. So tax deferred. Okay. Now, tax deferred account is going to be your IRA, your 401k, the traditional stuff, right? Your 403b, your 457, your simple, your SEP, right? Like all of those, which I guess are versions of IRA, but just to put it out there. Now remember, it says tax deferred. So what that basically means is that we're able to take tax deduction now, okay? But then later you pay tax, okay? So that's kind of how the deal is. The government saying, okay, well, we're going to give you ability to save some taxes. You can deduct whatever you put in. So you put $10,000, you deduct $10,000 this year, and then 20 years from now, when I retire, when I start taking money out of my 401k, my IRA, is when I have to pay taxes on it. Okay, that's sort of what the deal is that you put funds in it. Now, the cool part is because it is tax deferred, meaning we're deferring the tax when we're going to pay it, that whatever is happening there is going to grow tax free. So, if we were to use an example, over here where I put in $10,000, and for whatever reason, the by the end of the year, I have $11,000, right? Let's assume that would happen. Unlike the scenario over here where this was tax applied, this is basically no tax now. No tax now. That's the key component to understand here. Then we also have a third bucket, okay? And in this third bucket is going to be tax free, okay? And tax free is going to be a Roth, is going to be our HSA, is going to be our 529 plans, right? And so those are going to be, oh, you can't really see this, but it does say this. It does say Roth, right? So these are the accounts where the money is being put in after tax. Now, in some instances, you might be able to still get tax deduction. We're going to talk about that in a second. But you put money, like if we're thinking about Roth 401k, Roth 403b, Roth IRA for that matter. We put money in, we pay taxes today, then we put money into this beautiful Roth thing. And then we invest it, right? We need to make sure that we actually invest it, and hopefully the market does what it should be doing and grows our money. And so now 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years later, when we need the funds, all of the money we put in plus whatever growth there was, we are able to take out tax free, so no taxes being paid. Now, I did say typically you don't get the deduction now, but you get it tax free later. So we're going to talk about a few different caveats, right? HSA, okay, you get tax deduction now, okay? You get tax-free growth, and you get tax-free withdrawal, okay? For medical expenses only, right? But this is one of the unusual ones that is not always typical, yet it exists, and it is a very powerful account, which is why a lot of the financial planners and tax professionals get very excited and they keep telling you about it, because it does hold a lot of power. So you get tax deduction today. If you invest it and it grows, whatever that growth is, you don't pay taxes, unlike what we talked about, like the savings account, or like even with the traditional where you have to pay it later. And then when you take it out, whatever that growth is, so like if I put $10,000 and all of a sudden years later is worth $20,000, I can take the entire $20,000 and pay my medical bills without having to pay any taxes. Okay, 529s are sort of a unique tax-free opportunity. Now, there is a zero federal benefit, but states might give you a benefit. So there might be a state tax deduction now. Okay, they grow tax-free. Okay, so tax-free growth basically means we're not chipping at it every single time that something happens within it, and then we withdraw tax-free as well. Again, there's a caveat with this one. The tax-free withdrawal for the 529s has to be for educational purposes. So like you can't use it to buy a car or boat, right? You can, it's just you lose on that tax benefit. There's like taxation and penalties and stuff. But as long as you use it for the purpose it was. So same thing with HSA. You can't use HSA to buy like, a vacation to Europe. Not going to work. I mean, you can. It's again, you're just going to pay the taxes and penalties and so on. So like, we probably shouldn't. So you need to use it for the things that benefit. Now, when we think about like, how do we put all of this together? Does that mean we should put everything into a tax free? Does this mean we refer everything that we like? How do we think about it? Because people get very excited about the whole like, ooh, tax free. Like, I mean, come on, who doesn't like tax free? You're like, ooh, free. I'll take free. Uh, there are caveats for it, right? There's a beauty in the tax free for sure, and there are times where it definitely should be implemented, and it makes sense. But like we talked about 529, it has to go to education only, and if nobody's going to go to school, like what is the purpose of putting it in? It's not going to work. HSA, there are rules about like who cannot use it, how you cannot, like all these different things, but it has to be used for medical purposes only, right? So, again, it may or may not necessarily be useful. The Roth accounts, are great, but, like you have to wait until you're 59 and a half to start taking money out. Otherwise, it comes with taxes and penalties and all these different things. And there's a 5-year rules. And so there's rules with it of what we can and how we can use it. So there's benefit. Same thing when we talk about and think through like the tax deferred piece. Like, yes, it's cool. You get tax deduction, then it grows tax free, which is good, right? Because again, tax is not chipping at it on a regular basis. But again, you have to wait until you are retired, until you are 59 and a half at least, to start taking money out. There's also rules that when you start hitting 73, and at some point it's going to be 75, there's required minimum distribution. So you have to take money out. So again, there are strategies and things of like when it works, when it doesn't. And then the taxable one, right? That's the one that we are consistently being taxed on. So, on that like savings and I get $5 in interest, I have to pay tax on that $5, which means that effectively speaking, I have less than $5 left for next year to grow on, right? And again, next year, if it becomes 10, then I have to pay tax on the 10 and 20 and so on. But the benefit is I can put money in whenever I want, take it out whenever I want. There's no rules. I can use it for education, for travel, to start a business, to buy a home, to buy groceries, for medical expenses. So there's all these different things that I can use it. So it has the most flexibility, but it has, biggest taxation piece. The tax deferred has some benefits now, but later is the taxes and challenges that come in, especially with those RMDs. And then you have these like tax free where I might have to pay taxes now, but later. And so all of them come with let's just say like things attached to them. They all have depends on the purpose. So then you have to start thinking about in a bigger picture of what is the purpose of the money? What am I saving it for? If it is something that is for like medical, then HSA might make sense. Now, again, you have to be within the right plan. If it's a retirement and you're saying, well, my taxes are low now, but I kind of expect that I'm going to have higher taxes later, for example, or I just don't want complications with the RMDs and stuff. Maybe Roth is the right way, but again, income depending whether you can or cannot do it. And then if you're saying, you know what, I need to lower my taxes strategically right now, that the tax deferred. The way I like to think about it is again, depends on your personal situation, depends on your age, depends on your goals, depends what you're trying to accomplish. But overall, all three of those play a big role in building wealth, building a solid financial future for yourself and for your heirs. So there you go, folks. We've uncovered a few different ways to think about the different taxation and tax buckets that exist in accounts. And hopefully this gave you something to think about and say, ooh, I only have one. Maybe I should have the other two, because all of them play a part and they all become very beneficial, especially as we approach that retirement age and actually retire. And having all three gives you also flexibility. Hopefully, if you save enough, whether you want to retire early, whether you want to delay, whether you want to take Social Security now or delay it. So it gives us room to be very strategic and to really think through what is going to be the best, the most optimal way for you today, tomorrow, and 10, 20, 30 years into the future, as well as considering what happens to the heirs. So thanks for watching, y'all. Until next time, stay forever money blessed.